So Shri usually has me introduce people to everyone. So if you do not know Jeannie, this is Dr. Jeannie Brisson. She's a na naturopath, correct?
Yes.
Yes, who's going to teach us the basics of dowsing today and a little bit of the history. And so then I will shut up and let Jeannie take over.
Hello, everyone. I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with dowsing. I first came to dowsing in 2005 through my professional association with Dr. Melissa Loeb. She's a fantastic chiropractor in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we worked together. So in the office, we used a type of dowsing commonly known as muscle testing, using an indicator muscle to determine where to work, what supplements to give, and other things related to the treatment of the patient on the table. Then in 2006, I did training in the body talk system, which uses a similar but slightly different form of muscle testing designed to access the innate intelligence of both the conscious and subconscious mind to create intentional thought forms and facilitate healing. So by the time I came to pendulum dowsing through my training in biogeometry in 2011 and 12, I was pretty confident with my dowsing skills. At that time, vibrational radiesthesia, also known as vibrational dowsing, was taught as part of the foundation training in biogeometry. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. So, what is dowsing? Why do we want to use it? And is there a faster way? Basically, when you dowse, you're seeking guidance on a particular issue that you are not getting through other methods. I use multiple forms of dowsing depending on the situation, and I usually only use a pendulum when I don't get direct guidance through my clairs or my psychic skills, which are normally pretty fast for me. So when I say clairs, I mean beyond the five senses. And the four main ones are clairvoyance, which is seeing, or you see an image like in your inner mind. Clairaudience is inner hearing. Clairsentience, or feeling sentience. And claircognizance is like a gnosis, an inner knowing. So for something simple like supplements, which supplements to take and which supplements are good for me in that moment on that day that I'm asking, I get immediate guidance through my dominant clairs, which are clairsentience and claircognizance. But I also use dowsing, and I use a form of dowsing where I'm using my own body parts. So I can do that very quickly. I'll show you like 3 different methods to use. And these are good to use if you feel confident using them. They're easy methods, and you can use them in places like the grocery store or shopping or something like that, where maybe you don't want to be so conspicuous, swinging a pendulum around. So the first one that I'm going to show you is what I call the finger press method. And it's basically you take your index finger and you press on it with your middle finger, and your no is just normal. You're just putting a little bit of pressure on the index finger, and your yes is a break in that circuit. And you set that with your mind. You tell yourself, okay, this is my no, and this is my yes. And so you can, I developed this skill when I was working with people on the table who weren't really open to muscle testing. Like, they just would not have believed in the treatment that I was going to give them if they knew that I was dowsing to find out what to do. So, you can just kind of put your hand down by your leg and just quickly douse and get your answers. You can also use the O-ring method. This one's really easy. A lot of people use this one. It's easier to get. So this is your no. Your fingers are just holding tight with one another. And then your yes, you get a break in the circuit. And those are two types of mental dowsing that you're using because you're asking mental questions. But you can also do the same with something that I call fall forward or fall away. And this takes the question and the subjective mind uh, the out of it. And so what you do is you stand evenly on your feet and just stand in a neutral position where you're not moving forward, you're not moving backward, you're just standing. And then you hold that supplement up to your heart and you just wait. And if it's something that your body's in resonance with, something that might be good for you to take, you're going to move towards it. And if it's something that there's an aversion to, you're going to move away from it. And so that can be a really easy method for people to use, especially when they're first learning, that you can trust your answers because you're not even asking the questions. You're just asking your body to respond. And if your body doesn't move one way or the other, you wait and you wait and you wait and you're holding your supplement there. It just means that it's neutral. It's like, if you really want to take it, take it. It seems like, your body's not averse to it, might not really need it, but maybe your mind needs it because you like that supplement and you trust it. So if I'm feeling a little bit off, I use vibrational dowsing and systematically hold my pendulum set to my personal wavelength to check my vibration. And I'll talk more about the personal wavelength method later in the presentation. But what the personal wavelength method does is it takes that subjective mind out of it and it increases your accuracy. So now I'll just give you an overview of how this presentation is going to flow. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about the science, and then we'll talk about the difference between vibrational dowsing and mental dowsing. And then we'll do a little show and tell and have some fun and look at some different tools. Very interesting. And then I'll do a brief demo of my process using that personal wavelength method. And then I'll open it up to questions. All right, let me have a sip of water. Let's talk briefly about the science. Everything in nature has a unique vibrational signature on the electromagnetic spectrum that emanates a particular vibration. Our Western reductionistic science is based on the physics of quantity, which is based on observation of the material world. All conventional knowledge is derived from studying the phenomenal world of effects, and generally they don't consider the spiritual source that all manifest form emanates from. Very simply, in most Western science, if something can't be measured and quantified by our machines, it doesn't exist. The science of quality, however, is based on the discovery and completion of mapping out all of the 12 frequencies on the vibrational spectrum. This was accomplished by scientists and priests in the 19th and 20th centuries. These vibrations create and sustain everything in our three-dimensional reality. In other words, they cause the physical world to come into existence through vibration and resonance. In biogeometry, we dowse with specialized tools that direct and measure these emanations through the interaction with our own energy field via a pendulum in the phenomenon of resonance. As my teacher would say, we come into resonance with everything in our environment, everything we create, everything we focus on, and everything we dowse. The physics of quality takes into account this conversation and interaction with nature. So what's the difference between vibrational dowsing and mental dowsing? Well, vibrational dowsing measures directly the vibrational radiations of a thing on the 12 energy band spectrum. This method can be used for serious scientific research or to test supplements to determine if they are beneficial or detrimental to you. I want to give a shout out to Vesica Institute. I did a lot of my training there, and Robert Gilbert runs the Institute, and he's a very incredible, very knowledgeable person. So they have an online in-depth 3-part series on the vibrational dowsing. And they also offer just part 1 as a standalone called the personal wavelength. And you can learn how to directly tune to your own unique wavelength and then dowse with your pendulum using that. And I do have a reference in the handout for people, if, you know, everything that all the materials that I used to develop this presentation is in there. And so you can go to some of the original source work. And I'll put actually, let me do that right now so I don't forget. In the chat, I'm going to put my email address in there, and then people can email me, and I will send you a copy of this presentation with some little cliff notes for you. So that's done. All right. So now mental dowsing or psychic dowsing is what most people are familiar with. And it generally involves a series of questions, say about a lost object, or should I take this supplement? Is it beneficial for me to go on this trip or date this guy? Or is there a draconian entity attached to my energy field? Any number of questions that you can ask. And one of the sayings that is in dowsing circles is that you already have the answers, ask the right questions. So I like that one. But one of the things that I like to think about when I'm doing a mental dowsing session is who is asking and to whom am I asking? And by asking that question, what I'm recommending is that you attempt to access your highest vibrational self in that moment and to direct the questions to the highest vibration you can access at that moment. This will help to protect your subjective desires from influencing the answers that you receive. So in a nutshell, the difference between the two is essentially vibrational dowsing detects pure vibrations on this 12-band spectrum, and you're not asking any mental questions. Where mental or psychic dowsing, you're using your mind to ask questions. And you're not asking your pendulum. You are asking, the pendulum is an indicator. It's not the one giving you the answers. You can think of the pendulum as an extension of your own energy field. And you can think of that extension allowing you to access these, whether you call it God or whether you call it nature or universe or your higher self, it doesn't matter, whatever your tradition or wherever you're at in your development, but that you're asking for a higher source to give you guidance. So now we get to look at some of the fun tools that we have. So first I want to start with one of the early tools that was designed by a scientist called Louis Turin. And this is one of the first tools, pendulums, that was designed to actually measure the 12-band spectrum. And you can see that there are 12 bands here, and you can actually move this up and down so that you can isolate each individual band. It's kind of an antiquity now, and I don't think it's used a lot anymore. Next, I want to show you a pendulum from Damenher, and this is called a tree orienting pendulum. So they do a process with orienting trees to one another all over the world. And this particular technology is called selfic technology. Next, I'm going to show you, this is considered to be a neutral pendulum. In other words, in and of itself, it doesn't have any structure like a crystal does. Each crystal has an internal structure that sets it to a particular wavelength. But this is made of Lexan, which is a type of acrylic, and it has very little consciousness, if you will, of its own. And it's known as a neutral pendulum. You can actually order a lot of these pendulums that I'm going to be demonstrating from the Vesica Institute, but also from biogeometry.com. The next ones, because we're talking about the vibrational spectrums, I'll just show you two different pendulums that separate out the detrimental and the beneficial qualities of the 12-band spectrum. And these both are used in the home energy balancing practitioner level. This particular pendulum is a BG3 emanator, and BG3 is a type of beneficial qualities that are present in the pendulum, so that the pendulum itself, when you use it, actually emanates beneficial vibrations that you absorb into your energy field. And this pendulum is called an ICUP pendulum, and ICUP stands for Ibrahim Karim, who developed it, universal pendulum. And you don't need to know that to use it. As a matter of fact, I use this one all the time and I forgot what ICUP stood for. But this particular pendulum resonates on the 7 planes of nature. And those are the physical plane, the etheric physical plane, the emotional astral plane, the mental plane, the causal plane, the spiritual plane, and the divine plane. So this is my pendulum that I use all the time, and I actually wear one on my neck. And this is the one that I'll demonstrate with, because I've been using this pendulum for a number of years. I'll use this pendulum if I can get it untangled. Oh my goodness. All right, so, and then just real quickly, like the BG3, that's something that you would learn about if you were to take the biogeometry training or read any of Dr. Karim's books, which he has 2 very nice books out there now, and they are available, and you can read about the science and you can learn a ton. It will be a deep study. All right. Untangled. So now I'm going to do a demo. And before I start, I just want to say that I'm a mixer. Everything that I've ever studied, everything that I've ever trained in, it all gets integrated and I find my own way with it. Personally, I consider searching for substances such as water or minerals and walking the land a form of vibrational dowsing. Although technically speaking, it's not, because you're still asking mental questions with your mind. And then, so then just this last little thing, these are a couple of copper wires, And Shri, you demonstrated the L rod in your presentation a couple weeks ago, and I have two rods, and I've played around with them a little bit. They're fun, but the search mode is just the two rods together, and then the yes is a crossing. So lots of fun. Once you get interested in dowsing, there's YouTube videos you can watch. The British guys are really interesting. And this brings up something that the American Dowsing Association recommends, which is always starting your dowsing session with 3 questions. Those questions are, can I, may I, and should I? Can I is a question of ability. In other words, do I have the skill set right now in this moment to do the dowsing that I want to do? May I is a question of permission from a higher source, nature, God, your higher self. And then should I is more of a question of ethics around what you're seeking guidance for. So if you're asking questions about another person without their permission, if you ask that question, the answer should be no, because you didn't get permission. It's, an invasion of someone's privacy. The should I can also be like for people who are professional dowsers and people hire them. It's about, should I work with this particular client? So now I'm going to demonstrate how I do my dowsing using the personal wavelength method. So what I do is I take my ICUP pendulum, and this particular pendulum is not available anymore. It's made from ebony wood. It's very light, and it's very sensitive, and it's very tuned to me because I've had it since 2011. And it's on a silk string that's tied, so there's no metal on it whatsoever. So very clean. So what I do is I wind up all of the string and I put it in my hand, and then I hold up my hand to the pendulum and I give the pendulum a little bit of energy. I put it in search mode. And then I slowly, without any jerking motion at all, let out the string length, slowly giving it that kinetic energy so that it doesn't have to pull my energy in order to get motion. And then I can start to feel it in the palm of my hand when it connects to my personal resonance. And my yes is a clockwise spin. So now it's tuned to me. It's tuned to my personal wavelength. And everything in manifestation has its own personal wavelength. Okay, and then I check to make sure I'm trying to hold it so you guys can see. I check to make sure it's not tuning into polarity. So now I have that, and that's my string length, and that's what I'm going to use for my session. And then I ask my 3 questions: can I, may I, and should I? So how you start your query depends on the complexity of the question being asked. So if you're asking a straightforward question like, would it be in my best interest to eat that chocolate eclair right now? Then you just ask. You don't have to write it down or, have some elaborate scheme, because you're just asking. Like you're in the coffee shop and you see that thing and you really want it. But the thing with the chocolate eclair is that you probably have a really strong desire that you want to neutralize so that you're getting actually the answer that you're wanting, which is it going to be good for me right now? Can I handle it? and then you get your answer. Um, if your question is really important and could cost you a lot, you'd be wise to really write things down and to, ask some narrowing questions and to really think about the questions. So, a really simple example that people use is locating water on your land. And, the first question you might ask is there water to be found on this land? And if you get a yes, then is it between 100 and 1,000 feet? If you get a yes, then you narrow it down. Is it between 0 and 50 feet? No. Okay. Is it between 50 and 1,000 feet? Yes. And then you would go in 100-foot increments to narrow it down. And then, you might even narrow it down to what you get to be the exact number that you get. And then if you actually drill the well, you can ask, how deep is the well? And you can see how close your accuracy is. I use the pendulum a lot if I can't find something. And so an example of that would be, is it in the house? If I get a yes, which room is it in? So I'd systematically go, is it in the bedroom? Is it in the bathroom? Is it in the kitchen? Et cetera, until hopefully you find the thing that you're looking for. I mean, sometimes you don't. I'll share a story that Tim had. He lost his Selfica bracelet, and these we get these Selficas from Dom and her in Italy, and he had bought his when we were on a trip in Italy. And so it was kind of important to him, and he really wanted his bracelet back. And he thought he knew where he lost it, and he dowsed, and he kept getting, I keep getting it's right here, but he couldn't see it. Well, then 2 weeks later, a friend of his was out and about, and on this piece of property where we were staying, and he said, I lost my bracelet. And this particular friend used, who's the patron saint of lost things? Anyway, we'll just say, I don't know. I can't think of any saints right now. Not that good of a Catholic, apparently. But she found his bracelet by calling on her patron saint, who she totally trusted and loved and had complete faith in. And she found it exactly where Tim had dowsed, where he had lost it. So he did end up getting it back. Another story that I'll share with you is I went on a hike with my dear friend Mary, and it was early in the spring and it was cold. But we were hiking, we got to the river, and we both just had to put our hands and feet in the river. So we took off our shoes and pulled up our pant legs, and we were playing in the river. She had a ring on her finger and she didn't want to lose it in the freezing cold river water. So she had taken it off and put it in her shoe. Well, we were there at the river. We were the only ones there. And then some people came, and they had two big dogs. And the two big dogs just came running up to us and were romping around. And then Mary realized that they kind of scattered our shoes and our stuff, and her ring was gone. So I get out my pendulum, and honestly, I can't remember if I got Mary's personal wavelength or my own, but I dowsed for her ring. I asked Mary to bring into her mind her ring, and I dowsed her ring, and I only got that it was one place and we couldn't see it. And I just said, Mary, it's gotta be here. I keep getting that it's here. And then I kind of stepped back, and like way in this crag, deep in, like the sun came just at that time, and a little sparkle came, and there was her ring. So that was pretty cool. We were both very, very happy. I was happy because I trusted my dowsing skills and said, no, I really think it's here. And Mary was happy because it was a special ring and it was one of a kind and she wouldn't have been able to replace it. So two good stories of finding something. I also have stories of not finding something. And, sometimes I ask, is it on another timeline? And I sometimes get a yes. So you don't always find things, even if you're a good dowser, and you just have to let it go and chalk it up to another lesson in non-attachment. All right. One more example is just using a really brief story about indulgences. And it's my story about an indulgence, and we'll just call it chocolate again, because I do like chocolate. But I'd been working really hard, and I really just wanted to just tune out and have some chocolate and, not continue doing what I was doing, even though I was on a good trail and I wasn't quite at a good stopping place. And so I got out my pendulum and I said, would it be in my best interest to have some chocolate and in other words, take a break right now? And I got a yes. And it was like, part of me went like, wait a minute, I'm going to ask again. And I asked again, would it be in my best interest to have some chocolate right now and take a break? And I got a no. And I could actually feel in my body the different places that I was getting my answer from, even though I was using my personal wavelength, right? I'm still asking a mental question. And I could feel the first answer when I got a yes was coming from my lower desires. And my second answer was coming from a place in me that really wanted to have a little more discipline and to build a strong muscle of sticking with something until the end, right? To get to a good stopping place. Because, I'm really good at procrastinating, like probably many of us are. So it's still a little early, but I just want to go through now my top 10 tips and guidance on your mental dowsing skills. So the first one, and you should always start with this one, is to clear your energy field. Get yourself centered and calm and get yourself to a neutral state of being, because it's really easy to influence your answers if you have a strong desire. So one of the things that I recommend, if you're not super clear on noticing if you're in a clear neutral state, is they have these things called consciousness scales, and you can find them in David Hawking's book Power versus Force. I have a reference to that. You can find them. I even put a link on the in the reference section that you can just find it on the internet, images where you can ask, am I resonating at this level? Am I resonating at that level? And you want to make sure that you're resonating at a certain level so that the person, you asking the question, is at a high enough frequency that you're going to get answers that are beneficial for you. The next one is that what you're actually doing is you're tapping into your own higher wisdom, and you're creating an extension of your own energy field so that it's literally like an antenna, that you're using that antenna to tap into the field around you. The next one is less of a tip and more of a, you got this, you can do this, everybody can do it. Is that everybody can dowse, everybody can dowse. And some people are better at it than others. And it's like anything. If you want to be good at it, you develop a relationship with it, you develop some discipline, and you practice and you practice and you practice. And when you don't, when you kind of run up against a wall and you go like, man, I don't understand. Like, it's not, I didn't get the answer, and it said it was over here and I found it over there. That's just part of the learning, and we all go through it. The fourth thing is embracing the sentiment that you already have the answers. What you need are the right questions. And that really speaks to, we all have a connection to our source, and that, in my belief system, my reality, I believe that we're all connected to the same source, and that we can all tap into that source through our own connection with our center point in our toroidal field, within our body, that central channel, the Sushumna, that the Ida and Pingala weaves around, and that when we can find that central channel, that we have access to everything in the universe in the present moment. The fifth is your responses are usually faster if you have a short string length. So if I have my pendulum and I have it on this really long string, it takes longer for your answer. It's got to move all the way through that length of the string. So generally you want your string to be a little shorter. And when you are, just a little FYI, if you go further with the personal wavelength method, it's a harmonic. So your first one will be at whatever level, but then you'll tap into your personal wavelength again as a function of harmonics, like in music. And then I just realized I didn't show you this beautiful amethyst pendulum. So I consider crystal pendulums to have their own agenda because of the crystalline structure that comes with it. Personally, I resonate with amethyst, and I resonate with the purple flame of creation. So this is a good pendulum for me. These pendulums that are crystals can also be programmed so that people can put, it's almost like a computer chip where they're designed to work to do a specific task. So I just realized that I didn't show you guys that. And then the sixth tip is you're asking permission. Can I, may I, and should I? And, I don't always ask these questions personally, especially if I'm just, checking on, should I take this supplement? Ooh, heck yeah, female balance, you bet. But if it's just something simple, I don't always ask these questions. But if it's a big deal and I'm going to really, ask a lot of questions, I make sure that that first one is a yes. Can I? If it's a no, I'm not going to engage. Not in that moment. For whatever reason, it's a no. I'm going to respect that. Number 7, when you're ready to start, put the pendulum in search mode. So you want to give it some energy. And your search mode, my search mode is back and forth. Yours might be on a diagonal because maybe your yes is a forward swing and maybe your no is a side to side swing. So you determine what that is. And that leads to number 8, which is determine your yes or no's and then focus on it. Show me a yes, show me a no. Show me a yes, show me a no. And what that does is it really focuses your mind on the pendulum. and you're asking your indicator. It's an indicator. It's not the answer giver. It's not an oracle. It's an indicator. And then your accuracy gets better and better as you use your tools. Test yourself with known things and unknown things. You can ask somebody to hide something for you and give it, a certain parameter. It might be too hard. And then see if you can find it. And if you can't, don't give up. Keep trying. And then number 10 is just what I've already been speaking to. Your pendulum doesn't tell you anything. We're not asking the pendulum. We are using the pendulum as an indicator to a question that we're asking. And with that, I want to just open it up for questions. And you can email me if you want to have a copy of this presentation. I'll change it so it's much more just for you and not so much my cues and prompts, so that I would remember to say everything that I wanted to say with y'all. So thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them. And maybe if I don't know the answer, someone else here will, and please pipe up. It's an interactive and co-created space. So let's bring all of our wisdom forward and share with one another.
Thank you, Jeannie. I want to be the first one to ask a question. Excellent presentation, enjoyed it. So question on vibrational dowsing. So when you douse, you said you don't ask a question. So you just give it an energy and then it will just start saying yes whenever it.
No, actually with vibrational dowsing. So when I am using my pendulum, using the personal wavelength method, and let's say I'm testing supplements, and let's just say I have like 10 things that I might consider taking based on what I have going on. So each one, once I get it tuned to my personal wavelength, my yes is a clockwise rotation. Then I'm going to put it back in search mode, and I'm going to either hold or just put my pendulum over the supplement. And if it's good for me, if my body wants it right now, it's going to give me a yes. I'm not asking, I'm waiting for the response. And if it's neutral, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to stay in that search mode. And if it's not good for me in that moment, it's going to give me a no. So it'll start swinging counterclockwise. And I'm going to do that with each supplement that I'm considering taking. In this example, the supplements. So it's actually tuning into the vibration of the thing when I'm holding my pendulum over the supplement. And because it's set to my personal wavelength, it's a direct vibrational resonance checker to see if it's harmful or beneficial for me.
Okay. Would you be able to douse for somebody else? Then you wouldn't have to know their personal wavelength.
Well, that brings up a really good point, is that if you have a witness of them or an image, then you can tune into their personal wavelength, and then you can check for them.
Okay.
So generally I get a signature. Sometimes I get their birth date and their name when they were born, so I can really tune into their precise frequency when they entered into this world.
Right. Okay. So I would say anybody else who wants to ask a question, please unmute yourself and then go ahead, ask a question or raise your hand or put it in the chat, whichever way you prefer.
So this is Sabrina. Hey, it was a great presentation. Sorry I missed some. I got my Eastern and Central confused a bit. I have used pendulums for years. I've never used one of yours, which is very intriguing to me. I really like what you showed with the wavelength and stuff. I do it naturally, but I didn't understand the science behind what you were saying. So I use my body as a pendulum. How can you incorporate that into the biometric one that you use? Do you do a separate double check with the other one? How would you recommend? Because I'm a pendulum myself. That's how I've trained myself to do that, because growing up in the Bible Belt, you don't want to pull that pendulum out and start doing things in front of very, radical Christian people. So that's been my case. So I've just learned to just get a yes, no, maybe right in the middle. And I do it with my consciousness somehow. I'm not even sure how I do it, but I do it. But then when I'm not sure, I confirm with just a crystal pendulum. I can, even if I don't have a pendulum with me, I always carry a pendulum with me, but I also do it with my necklace. So because it's with me all the time, so it has my frequency and wavelength in it. So what is your recommendation for that?
Recommendation, are you asking for a recommendation I guess I'm not clear on the question. Are you asking me if it's good for you to use your body as a pendulum, or is it different to use the personal wavelength?
How would you use them both and incorporate them to double check your findings of your human pendulum and then double biometric? How would you, or do them together as an indicator? Because a lot of times I'll feel things in my body. And when I'm doing that, if I'm doing illnesses in people, I'll feel it in my body first, and I can confirm it with the pendulum. How would the biometric one be different than a crystal pendulum or a metal one?
Well, the crystal pendulum has its own agenda. So depending on the crystal and the crystalline structure, it's going to filter that through the qualities of, say, aventurine or amethyst or clear quartz or whatever the crystal is. So, that's fine. What I like about the ICUP pendulum is that it resonates on the 7 planes of existence here. And, so whatever your methodology is with the planes, because there's the Hindu ones, which are, the Atman and the Buddhic and all of that, but there's still 7 planes. Or, if you just like more of the new age where, you're doing, physical, vital, emotional, mental, causal, et cetera. Whichever one, I think they're the same planes. I think they just have different names and different understanding that comes through that particular stream. But what you're talking about, I think especially now, because of, I know a little bit about you and, what you're going through and the type of work you do and everything. And just now, based on what you have going on, I could see where learning the personal wavelength method would be really beneficial for you, because it's out there. It's not coming into your body for you to get that. And so that you can start to have to not lose your level of sensitivity, knowing, but bring it out to where it's away from you. It's, you're still in resonance with it, but it's not on the inside. So that would be one, benefit, I think, for you personally. My husband, Tim, who's on the call. Hi, Tim. He does these home energy corrections for people, and it's really hard on the practitioners because they have to find these places that are having a lot of, toxic radiation sources. And, they've biogeometry system has continued to refine and refine and refine the protocol so that the practitioners are just barely finding it, and then they're backing up because of this process of resonance. And so I think it's a really, really good question that you brought up. And, the personal wavelength class it's loaded with a lot of information. It's really interesting. And, now just that class, I think it's $299. It's an online course and you have a year to do it. So anyone can sign up for that. And, I don't have any affiliation with either the Vesica Institute or biogeometry, other than I've done a lot of their trainings. And I really believe in what they're putting out there, and that it's clean and pure, kind of like Amy's stuff with, is that, it's just, really, they're really good tools to work with. And I think it just expands your level of understanding because it is so scientific.
Mhm.
The people who have developed the system and the scientists that found it before and the priests that found it before, it's a lineage. And I believe the Jesuit priests protected this knowledge that came from, ancient Egypt and probably beyond.
Yeah. And then my second question is, thank you, that helps a lot. My second question is, it doesn't matter which pendulum I use, my yes and my no and my maybe are always, always, always the same. Can you explain that? Is it because I'm influencing what I want it to be from the source, the subtle bodies that I go to, or the subtle levels of creation that I go to? Or how does that work? Do I just say, just show me my yes this way, show me my no this way? Because other practitioners have told me, just ask the pendulum you're using what is its yes and what is its no. But across the board, I've been doing a pendulum for years now. I mean, over 20 years. And mine always is yes the same way, always no the same way, and always maybe is the same way. So what is your explanation for that?
I'm the same. My training came with the vibrational, and the clockwise was a yes, and the counterclockwise was a no. And when I got some of Amy's pendulums, she has it the other way around, and I asked, and it's with this pendulum, it's my yes is a clockwise and my no is a counterclockwise. So my way of doing it overrode the programming that was already in the pendulum. And I think that's a personal preference that's coming through. It's what you're already geared towards. And I actually think it's a good sign that no matter, what programming is in, the tool, that it's still you that's asking the question. And it's, again, the pendulum is an indicator. It's not an oracle.
Correct.
You're not giving your power away.
Correct.
You're not giving your power away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sabrina. Thanks for coming.
Anybody else? Any other question? Please unmute yourself or any comment.
I was curious about, you were talking about the different types of clairvoyance, and I'm just getting into dowsing and all of this. So, and so you were saying that, we can determine which types of clairs we have. I know that's not exactly dowsing per se, but how did you determine which clairs you had, and how might we be able to kind of decipher which is something to kind of tap into that intuitive part, as opposed to staying with, I'm like doing dowsing for everything, and I'm like, where do I get to this point where it's just like I can figure this out by just not having the pendulum?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is that we all have capacity to open up our clairvoyance, our clairaudience, our clairsentience, our claircognizance, that we all have that potential. And, we're raised in a culture that, you're kind of weird if you have paranormal abilities. So a lot of kids come in with them and they shut them down. So then, you're trying to open them back up. It's normal for us to empathize with another human being and know what they're feeling because of resonance. Like when we love, if you think of a child who just, their emotions are all out there. And when they love, like they're just bright and so loving. And when they're angry, they're just, whoa, a tornado on the floor flinging around, like, that emotional level is open and communicating. So those of us adults who are empathic, we can tune in to what someone else is feeling, even if they're presenting with a mask and saying, oh no, I'm not angry. We can feel it. So, we can open to that. We can open to that and we can set the intention for that. And then there's methods to develop those skills. And yeah.
So
And, when I said that I have some dominant ones, I mean, I remember the first time that I heard what at that time I called the voice of God in my head. It was at a holotropic breathwork session I think it was in the 90s, early 90s. And I actually heard this strong male voice tell me something. And I was like, that was the first time that I got my clear audience. And that's when I said it's one of my dominant ones, that's one of my dominant ones is the inner hearing. Like I just hear the voice that says, turn around, don't walk that way. And it saved my butt. Because, someone was going to accost me and a voice in my head said, turn around, walk the other way. And when I did, the person who was waiting to, accost me started shouting obscenities. I didn't know this person. It was just a car that drove by and then pulled over and got out and was standing next to the car. So, sometimes they get awakened like in those kind of emergency situations where it's almost like maybe your guardian angel comes and says, you're going to hear this now, or you're going to feel this now, So just know that you already have it. All those, abilities are in you. They're latent, but you can find them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Steve Parsons has raised his hand. Steve, please unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. I'm from Indiana. A question in your practice, actually. Have you seen a difference in muscle testing pre-COVID and post-COVID?
No, I don't think so. What I've seen is, man, and it hurts me to say this. I've seen that people who have succumbed to the, I just have to be really careful. I've seen that in some people, that they're less in touch with their soul level access to their own inner wisdom. I'll just say that. But I haven't seen a difference in my ability to get, good answers, I'll say.
Okay.
Of what to do and where to work and how to help them.
That was my question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Anybody else? I had a question regarding pyramids and scalar waves.
Ooh.
Would Ibrahim Karim talks about it, and are these things related? I mean, just a very general question, I think.
Wait a minute. Are these things related? You mean scalar waves and pendulums?
Yeah.
You know, I right in this moment, I can't remember the exact definition of what a scalar wave is. So I can't answer that question, but I think it goes back to the question of all life form on this three-dimensional reality that we live in and that we perceive, the XYZ axis of, right, these 3D forms that we call us, that we're all connected through vibration, through resonance, and that wherever you are at on that vibrational scale, whether it's in that scalar wave form, or whether it's, wherever it's at on that electromagnetic spectrum, that we're still connected with it through the function of resonance, and that we are literally connected with everything in our universe through vibration. And that's why when we douse and we're clean and clear with our questions, that we can get answers to our questions. And I don't think it's so much divining, like divining is more like, oh, can I psychically predict something that hasn't happened yet? I don't think that's what we're tapping into when we're dowsing. I think we're tapping into the present moment as a unified, past, present, everything that's there. And then what's going to happen in the future, there's so many possibilities that, I think it was, Tim, you might pipe up here about, I think it's every 3 seconds or 6 seconds, there's like 6 possibilities. And so Sabrina, you remember, right?
Yeah, it's 6 seconds. We access different points in the future timeline.
Yes. Yeah. So did that answer your question, Shri?
Yeah, more or less, but I'm interested. I think Tim unmuted himself. You might have some comment here.
Yeah, maybe he has something to add, because he's a practitioner, so he knows a lot of stuff that I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of different definitions of scalar waves. 2 of them that I understand and kind of resonate to is, one of them is that they are actually faster than light speed. And the other is that it's actually an electric impulse as compared to an electromagnetic impulse. With the magnetic, it can't move faster than the speed of light, but if you drop that magnetic part to the electric vibration, then it can move faster than speed of light. Those are, like I said, 2 of the definitions that I understand on the scalar wave. In biogeometry, the earth grids that we work with are frequently considered to be a scalar wave. So we're wanting to put correction into that scalar wave to tune it so that it's no longer detrimental. And I hope Steve's still here. One of the things, I know his question was about COVID, but the 5G came out at the same time. So, in my testing and in my work and the whole process of, human beings are vibrational beings. And when we start adding these vibrations of, microwave or millimeter sized wavelengths, we start to break down some of those vibrations that are defining us. So skills may diminish as a result of, some of those micro vibrational adjustments that make me Tim versus Shri, or male versus female, they start to get broken down. They start to get disrupted because of our body's not used to and adapted to these new electronic impulses that are assaulting us.
Great. Thank you. That is a great insight. That is indeed a great insight. Thank you.
Could I add to that? I'm
Sure.
a practitioner also, and I do healing with people. I have noticed a difference in the clients, vaxxed and unvaxxed. And I probably shouldn't say those words, but you can zap those out, Jeannie. But
Thank you.
yeah, there is a difference. And sometimes when I'm clearing the client and they've got a headache, or the biggest thing I have noticed is the disconnection from source, the column of light, the Shushumna going up from the top of a head to source, that gets disrupted if you've been influenced. So that's the biggest thing. The second thing is I will sometimes see like a inorganic, organic, however you want to call it. It's like it feels like, and I can, in the etheric, I have all the clairs, so I feel it, smell it, taste it, whatever. There is, it feels like a swimsuit cap. There's old rubber ones that we used to wear.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel those at the top of the head of the person. And sometimes I have to peel that away etherically from the top of the head, or it's grown into their spinal cord or other parts of their body behind the eyes. So the whole purpose of this whole stuff of being influenced this way with an outside substance is to stop us from going to the next level of our God-given ability to transcend the earth plane with the ascension. So this interference pattern was brought in. Now, how does the 5G affect it? The 5G is the system that can redirect and reprogram the nanoparticles that are coming in with these different interferences. And it's in the air, it's in the substances we put into our body and stuff like that. So that is a fact. I've noticed a difference with that. Now, how do I feel scalar waves and other waves? I feel them in a physical, in my body, in different places that they enter in my body, and they feel differently. Because I'm also a shaman, and some of my shamanic work comes in as different bandwidths of light, and also they feel different when they come in. Some come into my hands, some come in into my top of my head, sometimes they'll come in across, and sometimes they'll come in from the ground up. The scalar waves are different. They come in, as Tim was saying, they come in as a pulse wave, but it doesn't need particles to emanate. It comes in, it's a separate kind of, I feel it's a separate kind of, if you want to call it, it's not radiation, but it's an energy, a wavelength that does not need magnetics. It comes and doesn't need particles, because magnetics would be particles. They come in separately into our system if we are attuned to it. So you have to get the attunement. Reiki can do that sometimes. And you can just ask, you can ask your pendulum to help you to access those parts of it. And that would be beautiful with the way Jeannie was talking about the wavelengths. You access your wavelength. So if that's in your ability to have the access to that wavelength, it's going to show up. Because I have a scalar machine, an AO scanner, and I've used the Healy. Healy's feels different than the AO scanner. One is a little bit higher frequency, scalar waves frequency. And when they come in, I feel it in every cell in my body versus something else that's electromagnetic. It pulses in my body differently. So, but I'm very, very highly sensitive. So you just have to train yourself. So I just wanted to add that there is a difference. And even Damanhurian energy that comes in from the synchronic lines, they come into my palm in a triangular spiral. It's a very weird energy and it feels different. And I don't mean weird bad. It's just this equals that is very attuned in my body. I instantly know which wave is coming into me.
Great. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thing of it. Anybody else has any questions or comments? I think we have gone substantially over an hour now. So I just want to thank you, Jeannie, for this excellent talk. I mean, you did an excellent work in preparing for it.
Yeah,
And
thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Yeah, it was a lot of
Thank you.
fun. We'll do more. Let you guys all know.